Hey there, welcome to this week's tumbler tutorial. We're going to start out with a prepped 20-ounce tumbler from the Stainless Depot. I'm going in with some Delta Ceramcoat acrylic paints to create my own custom dusty blue color for this tumbler. Creating a custom mix of glitter, as always measuring with my heart. All of these glitters for this custom mix are from ChaseRae glitters, and they are Euphoric, Siesta Keys, Force of Nature, and then Nightfall. I will be applying the glitter using the epoxy method. Once I have this tumbler fully coated, I'm going to then roll up in some parchment paper using pretty good pressure to flatten down any pokey bits. Once that thin layer of epoxy we use to adhere our glitter cures, I'm going to go in with 30 ml of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy and then do a sand all over the tumbler. We're going with a peekaboo design here, and so I have cut all of my elements out on stencil vinyl. The first square that I added of the stencil vinyl is just being used as a guide for the actual decal that will be placed onto the tumbler. I like to create a square in Cricut Design Space using the dimensions of the tumbler that I am using and create my design into that square so I kind of have an idea of where things will be placed before I actually get into placing them onto the tumbler. Of course, I do move things around here and there, which you will see. The initial square I laid down just as a guide for my decal, I am going to remove as this next element will not fit without overlapping. And so once I have a little bit more applied, I will put that square back on again, just so I can put the smaller elements around it to ensure I still have the correct space for the decal itself. Now that the larger bottom elements are added, I'm going to go back to that square, as I said is just a guide, and apply it back onto the tumbler and then go ahead and add my smaller elements in the spaces I still have available. As I'm placing these stencils onto the tumbler, I am keeping in mind that they will all have an outline, and so I want to ensure that I place them with enough space in between the next one, just to ensure I don't have any issues once I get to that portion of the design. Once all elements have been applied to this tumbler, I'm going to go ahead and remove that square that was utilized as a guide, and then spray paint this tumbler using the shade Stone Gray from Rust-Oleum's 2-Time Ultra Spray Paint. I will be creating a distressed look using multiple colors, using this decal as the guide for those colors, and they will be applied using a dry chip brush. The decal that's going on this tumbler does have multiple colors on it, and so I am trying to bring in as many of those as I can without muddling up the tumbler. I want to ensure that it has some depth and dimension to it. I'm also dipping my brush into the paint color, but then I'm tapping it on the clean portion of, I'm using a paper plate here, just to get the excess off. I want to go in with lighter strokes instead of being heavy-handed with the paint. To add additional depth and dimension to the tumbler, I decided to go in with Southern Belle's foil adhesive, and with a small paintbrush, make some small strokes across the entire tumbler so that I could add some glitter. We can't have a tumbler without extra glitter. I dried the foil adhesive real quick with my heat gun, and then the first glitter being applied is Jazzy Belle from Peachy Olive Glitters. For more depth and dimension, I am going to repeat the same exact steps. This time I will be going in with a different colored glitter. For this next glitter, we are going to use Broadway, which is more of a brown gold tone, while Jazzy Belle is more on the blue side. Because I used the Southern Belle foil adhesive and it was already dry upon application of my glitter, I was able to immediately use a chip brush to get the excess glitter off the tumbler without causing any smudging. For my favorite part, it is time to remove all of the stencils and reveal the glitter underneath. I'm absolutely in love with that blue shade that I mixed up, and I think it goes amazing with the distress sort of look we created with the acrylic paints. This part of a peekaboo is so extremely satisfying to me, just revealing the glitter underneath and the design as a whole. I absolutely love it. And then when we do the offsets or the outlines, it just brings it all to life. Peekaboo tumblers are definitely on the top tier of my favorite tumblers to create. Once all stencils were removed, I went in with 20 ml of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy. Once cured, I did sand lightly. However, the area where the decal will be going, I did not sand at all. I left it glossy. As the decal is a clear backed vinyl, I wanted to ensure that we did not have a dull background for it to be applied to. Okay, so this is take one of my offsets or my outlines for each of the items on this tumbler. Don't worry, I will not share all 3 takes of this, but once I got this black onto the tumbler, I was not a fan. It was so dark and just completely out of the spectrum of this design. So I took it all off and tried again. On my second attempt, I used a really pretty chocolate brown, like chrome-ish vinyl that I had gotten from Hobby Lobby. However, the vinyl acted almost like it was stale, if that makes sense, like the lightest little pull on the vinyl and it would just crack or break. And so I gave up on that and then went in for my third attempt, and I went with the trusty vinyl from TeckWrapCraft and used the brown textured metallic, and it was Chef's Kiss. Now, this took me a long time just to weed out and apply these offsets. It was tedious with all the curves and bumps and lines within each of these items on the tumbler. So doing it 3 times, it was a lot, but I'm happy that I did it because I was not happy with this black whatsoever. If I'm ever questioning something that I have applied to a tumbler, I do not seal it in with epoxy. I set it to the side and I think on it, look at it, think on it, and look at it again, and then make my decision on how I want to move forward. It is absolutely okay to change your ideas and your overall look for a tumbler. I thought for sure black was the way to go on this one, and boy, was I wrong. And it took me 3 attempts to get it right. For what I liked anyways. For the decal, I first made my measurement on how far I wanted it down from the top, and then I placed a piece of painter's tape up against the decal itself so that I could remove it and then make my measurements from one side to the other. So basically from one outline on the left of it and one outline on the right of it, just to ensure it was centered to my best ability with all that was on this tumbler. Now that everything is applied, I'm gonna, off camera, go ahead and make my other 2 applications of my offsets, which now you can see is the brown textured metallic. I then applied 10 mLs of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy, and now I'm doing some pinstriping here at the bottom just to clean everything up. The first thin pinstripe was also the brown textured metallic from TeckWrapCraft, and the blue line I'm adding is actually washi tape that I got from Hobby Lobby. I wanted to add a floral element to this tumbler, so of course I dove into my florals from Slide Hustle, who better than to get beautiful florals? And I found the perfect sheet that matched the color concepts so incredibly well. So I'm going to cut this little maroon flower out. This is a UV-DTF, and apply it at the bottom of my main decal, and then go ahead and make a little arrangement at the bottom, just a flower and some leaves, and that's where I am going to put my business name. Once everything was applied to this tumbler, it was then time for the 2 final coats of epoxy. For the 2 final coats, I used Flynn Sisters Artist Cure Epoxy. Both coats were 15 mLs, but the first coat I added Sunset Gold glitter from PDB Creative Studio, did a light sand, and then applied that final 15 mLs of epoxy. And with all that, this tumbler is complete. If you liked this week's tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more of my weekly content, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified of my new content, go ahead and hit that bell button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.